Record. Okay, we get it. Okay, here we are, day 20. So we're getting closer to the day that we've all been waiting for, the day when the Zman, the Matan Terasena, comes around and inspires us. So, we're entering into today was the day that they were told that they had to do Hagbolah. They were given the command that they would have to, on the third day, today's the third of Sivan, they were told on the third of Sivan that you're going to start tomorrow, you have to make boundaries around the mountain. Vigbalta es to make a Hagbolah, a gvul around the mountain. So, and it's interesting, so that, and they were busy with that. I'm not sure if they were busy for 3 days or they were told, you got to get used to it because in 3 days when the Torah was going to be given, again, it was supposed to be 2 days, and Moshe Rabbeinu added another day, so it turned out to 3, but you can't go up the mountain, you have to go beyond this point, not beyond. And we know from the Psukim, both here and in Kisisa, that even the animals had to be held back because they were somehow drawn to go over the mountain, wet paint, it's sort of like it says, don't go, so you go. What drew them there? So the animals maybe say it turned, the famous Gemara says, Chazal say that it turned into, beautiful, lush vegetation. And suddenly, a barren desert turned into a lush pasture land. And maybe the animals were drawn, but the people were obviously drawn. There was some sort of an instinct. Yet the message for the next 3 days that they were told, 2 and then turned to 3 days, is they have to work on this concept called Hagbolah. So what is that? What's the avodah of Hagbolah? Hagbolah means to make gvulim. So I want to repeat something, touch on something, add to it, something I said several times, but Torah is good and sometimes it's worth repeating. So why do we celebrate? And I'm sure many of us will do it. We're going to get flowers and beautiful flower arrangements. Unfortunately, the shul will be barren, and we usually have these beautiful trees, flowering trees up to the top, and beautifully done. Unfortunately, this year we won't have it, but many of us have them in it. So where does that come from? And it's interesting. If you look in the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah brings it down, and it doesn't say trees, it doesn't say flowers. They use this one specific word, asavim, to use grass. Asavim. Asavim means, it could mean flowers. Asavim can mean flowers too. Normally we associate asavim with things that wild grass or wildflowers. And he says, why do we do that? To remember the simchas matan Torah, the simcha of matan Torah. The simcha of matan Torah. I mean, it was nice, but simcha. I mean, you in a wedding, usually you're not too excited because the flowers cost so much, it doesn't give you so much joy. But flowers are nice if you're not one of the mechatanim had to pay for it, and you come, it's beautiful, nice flower arrangements. Simcha, it feels good. Why simcha? What's the simcha associated with asavim? And why bedafka asavim? Even though it's brought down, Magen says trees also. But so I once quoted. It struck me a Gemara in Chulin, and the Gemara said like this: the pasuk says in Tilim, Yehichvayit Hashem le'elam Yismach Hashem b'masav. So Rechnina b'Papa Dashna pasuk says the honor of Hashem will be forever. Yismach Hashem b'masav. Hashem will rejoice in his handiwork. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu told in the Bria Olam, and also it's interesting because it was also on the third. So today's the third of creation, and the Gemara says it's a yom. The Torah was given to a nation that's a triplicate, Kain Leishol, Tanakh, and on the third day, on the third month, and a lot of threes. A lot of Kain Leishol, a lot of different threes. And Moshe was the third to his mother. And the Gemara talks about it. The Gemara says many Talisoi, the Am Talisoi. So today is also a third. Today is the third of creation. It's Yom Shlishi. On the third of creation, Hashem made everything grow. So the pasuk says, the Medrash says, the Gemara, it's not a Gemara. He says he told the trees, Luminei, I want the trees. I don't want them to mix. Each tree should stick to its species. And he told that to the trees. When it came time for the grass to grow, to poof, Hashem said, Deshoim and Asavim, Deshoim and Esav are synonymous. So he says, so they said, ooh, we're supposed to, we didn't get any specific directive. Hashem didn't say, make sure you organize and you don't just come out into one hodgepodge of a bunch of flowers and a bunch of grasses overgrowing each other. So they made a kavachomer. He said, well, if Hashem doesn't want the people to be mixed in and shouldn't be just befuddled and confused and overlapping, so he should have said liminehu. He should have said, why did he say liminehu to the trees? And also he says it doesn't make sense. He told the trees, which naturally don't overgrow over each other, but grass and vegetation overgrows one over the other. It's natural for it to just spread all over the place. So they made a kavachomer, and they came up with the following conclusion. They said, you know what? It's a good idea. We will present ourselves. When Hashem says, the Esav should make his appearance, we will come in a uniform fashion. And then the Gemara says, miyad, he says, the Sarah Olam, the Malach said, Yehichvay Hashem le'olam, Yismach Hashem b'ma'asav. So the Gemara says, in the context of this Asovim, the Shoim, which is Esav, the same phrase that the Ramah uses, there was something about happiness that came about that time. What was the happiness? Where's happiness? Hashem was happy. He saw, he says, Hashem, he was happy when he saw that the Shoim didn't do what was instinctive to them to just, intermingle all over the place and just, explode in an explosion of flowers, but they did it in an organized fashion, and they learned the kavachem from the trees. What's this all about? And in short, what I'm thinking is like this. The Avodas Hashem is obviously we have to do things, but we have instincts. And our entire life is to resolve the tension between what we know we're supposed to do and what we want to do, what our instincts tells us to do. So, and that is what Torah is about. The sum total of Torah is Ratzon Hashem, and to control the natural instincts that drive us to Kina, Taiva, Kavod, or whatever it is that draws us, and to use the Seichel and to implement what we know to be true and temper our instincts. Vigbalta esam. There's an instinct, they wanted to rush, they're excited. The first lesson, after knowing that, we learned in 3 days, the first day was, I want you to, take a rest. I want you to get rid of your anxiety. The second day, I want you to know you're special. But the next thing, the third day, before I even talk about the mitzvahs, one thing I want you to know what the sum total of Avodas Hashem is learning how to control our emotions and refine them and define them in a way that they express Ratzon Hashem in everything you do. Because so often, our reactions are not in consonance with what we know to be true. And that's the greatest struggle of human. And it says, Mal Yudishu B'neinu. That's what the Malachim said. Yeah, men, they're crazy. They're beasts. So what's Moshe Rabbeinu getting to Torah? Hashem said, listen, you see what they can do. They can rise to higher than Malachim because they can take their instincts that are instinctive, like the animals. It says by the animals, even the animals were drawn. And they were excited. And sometimes you're even excited to do Avodas Hashem, but sometimes you have to be tempered and you have to hold back and you have to realize that the discipline that a person gets from a life of Torah, and understanding Torah, learning Torah, that's what makes us into deserving of having the Torah, because Hashem shows that we show Hashem, that we're capable of taking all that and refining it and making us into something that's more worthy than Malachim, as you often point out. That's what I think it means. In that, and we know for sure, if you want to know the formula of life, is live a life of self-control. If you got your life in control, that's where Simcha comes. Simcha is a clear formula, it's an easy formula. Learn how to regulate your life, to do things in the manner that are appropriate. You will have a joyous life. You won't get angry, you won't be anxious, you won't be overwhelmed, because you'll learn how to, with the Torah, with the direction of the Torah. And that's what Yismach Hashem b'masav. I think that's the Savim. And that's maybe why we take our Savim, because they represent in the Bria Hashem already, implanted in the Bria. This idea that there are instincts, the grass said themselves, for us, it's natural to go all over the place. But we learned the Kavachaima, they use the Seichel of Torah to know of the instinctive Torah, that is the blueprint of the universe, that, maybe we should also go Laminea, we should do it discipline, and that's where the beauty is, and that's why we take the Esav. Maybe that's where it comes from. Maybe that's where the Esav is, Eisa Shalom B'mreimov. When we do it, then we make peace and happiness in the world. Yehichvay Hashem li'olam, Yismach Hashem himself. So the Simchas Matan Torah. So that's something for all of us to think about. And I think that's what the day of a Hagbalah is. Now we have 3 days to work out that idea, to focus on that. Not necessarily they accomplish it in 3 days, but they really started putting themselves on a training, in a lifetime of training, to learn how to control that. And all of us, I've mentioned this many times, those of us certainly who lived and saw true Gedolei Yisrael. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Gedolei, but certainly by Gedolei Yisrael. Anyone, just the epitome of these two, I always say, is Rabbi Moshe and Rabbi Yaakov Feinstein. Rabbi Yaakov Feinstein and Rabbi Moshe Feinstein. They were it just emanated Shechina, because you knew everything was measured, the smile. It wasn't strained, it was natural, but everything. Rabbi Shlomo Volba had a chance to meet also, Mashgiach, who lived a life of discipline. We sometimes think discipline is prison, is punishment. It's being bound. It's just the opposite. Because when you're in control of your emotions, of your instincts, that's where happiness is. And we all know it. And that's what, as a kids, when they see what they want control, instinctive, they know that's the key. So I want to tell you, I clipped a story here a while ago. I'm not sure if I used it or not, but it's a good shur story because it's about flowers, not that happened on shurs, but it's sort of the sum total of the lesson I said today, and it surrounds around flowers. So this story was told over a true story. Some guy, Moshe, he was a florist in some Jewish community, not quite sure where, could have been anywhere. It's a true story, somewhere, it doesn't say where, it says Burbach, Flatbush, probably in one of those venues, because you'll hear the story, you'll see that it was, high flyers, not just us simple folk who just bring a few pieces of grass home for Shabbos, big bouquets. So the story goes like this. So he describes his life as a florist, and you can imagine the tensions of the fine schmeckers in a sophisticated community. And some people are wealthy, the desires and the wants, and families coming in to order flowers for shurs, and 10 kids arguing how much we should spend. He goes through a whole beautiful little, very familiar type of a story. And then he segues to the story of, he says, he talks about a story that happened to him sometime before Shavuos, somewhere during the Simcha season. So he has this guy who's his loyal aide. His name is Michael. Sounds like a non-Jew, but he's been with him for decades. Counts on him. He knows things more instinctively than he does. And he recalls how he told Michael, he says, listen, don't forget to take those silver mirrored vases that I left at the terrace to go pick them up. So he sees that Michael's sort of hesitant, and Michael says to him, "You mean the Regency?" See, terrace is a place where it's a small hall, not a big hospital, but it's for the rich people, and they make like a vart and things like that. That's what they make it. The Regency was one of these, takana halls where people who can't afford anything. So, and he knew that it was supposed to go to terrace. Meanwhile, Michael said, "No, Regency." And he realized, and dum, someone ordered a very expensive floral arrangement to a vart or something that was happening in the terrace, which is this posh area. And meanwhile, Michael, for the first time in all the years, he realized, and this happened the day after. Michael says, "No." He realized he instead of delivering it to the terrace, he brought it to the cheap hall and left it there. So the guy says, "It's strange, no one called me. No one called me." And here was an expensive bouquet that never got to the right place. And it ended up into some, Schnorr's wedding somewhere, a magnificent bouquet that was so inappropriate for the venue that it was in. And neither one called me, not the halls. And he worked with the halls. They all knew. They all knew him, and yet he didn't hear from any of them. So he says, look, he knew the family that ordered the fancy flowers, made the fancy vart and terrace, the fancy posh hall. So he calls him, he says, the donor says, I'll call him up. So he calls him up and he says, did you make the vart last night? He says, yeah. And you probably didn't get the flowers. He says, no, we didn't. So he says, so whatever happened? Why didn't you call me? He said, we tried calling you, but you didn't answer. And then we tried your house and you didn't answer. And there was no accusations. You could have been upset, right? And no accusation, no harsh words, no harangue. Just, they figured something must have happened. Sure, something must have happened. And again, he saw what a Yid is about. Here it was, they spent a lot of money, and they ordered it, and it didn't come. It was obviously to impress, whatever, to make the Kala happy, whatever it was. And yet they took it in stride. Okay, so he got them out of the way. Okay, the Donners, he got out of the way. They were happy. They're decent people, and they controlled themselves. And they exhibited the quality of flowers, not necessarily having the flowers, but, people have their life in control. So he says, okay, let me call the hall. So he calls the other hall. Dove is the manager of the hall. He says, Dove, did you get a bunch of flowers? He says, yeah, it's amazing flowers. And he says, how come you didn't call me? So he says, I'll tell you the truth. There was a young couple, a Baal Tshuva, we were so smitten with this family, with this marriage that they were getting married, this young couple, Baal Tshuva, was so ehrlich, so beautiful. And, we had arranged with them about the different things of the chasana, and everything was worked out. I remember we once had a conversation about the florist, and the guy said, we'll see what happens with the flowers. And they never responded to me. And when the flowers came, I figured someone, a relative, some friend, maybe they sent it. So I didn't think twice. I was busy with the chasana. So meanwhile, it turns out that, it turns out that this beautiful couple who didn't care too much about the flowers, they couldn't afford it, it wasn't that important to them, ended up with a bouquet that was as magnificent as Har Sinai. And the other couple, ended up just taking in stride. So he says to him, the florist says to him with sincerity like theirs, who knows? They might have thought it was a wedding gift from Hashem. And Dov says to him, he says, wasn't it a gift from Hashem? And it really was. And he then tells him the whole story, how the delivery mistake in all his years, and the Donners who had ordered the flowers, there was a major bouquet. They were so easygoing about it. And they tried to call me once and didn't go crazy. Other people would call incessantly until they got, and he could have easily replaced it. It was all min Shemayim because it wasn't far away. It was in the neighborhood. And if they would have tried, they would have gotten him. But obviously, it was min Shemayim. He took the loss. Obviously, he could get out of his pocket. But he saw that Hashem had orchestrated events, that the Chos and the Kala, which is another good model for what we're doing on Shua's relationship between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Chos and Kala, that's what it is. And the lesson of the flowers, this story hopefully reminds you of this lesson. You remember the story. Remember, it's not about the flowers. It's about who we are and how we react. And if we get the message of the flowers, you don't need the flowers when the people are more beautiful than the flowers. The fragrance is more sweet than the most beautiful bouquet. And their presentation in the manner in which they act just simply overwhelms and blinds and diminishes whatever magnificent arrangement that person can make. We have to live the lesson of the flowers. The key to being a Yid, for 3 days before we got to Torah, we learned self-control. We have instincts, we have desires, we have ambitions that sometimes blind us and we trample on others. We have to remember the credo of the Yid is people who live with a sense of purpose and thoughtfulness and mindfulness and control everything, every emotion. The more we perfect that, the greater we will be. Indeed, the Am Skula, the Malachas Kaim Gai Kaddish and the Am Skula, may we listen to the lesson of the flowers, and hopefully we'll get flowers for our homes. We'll think about a little bit differently maybe after this lesson. Okay.